You wake up with a dry mouth. You walk to the kitchen. Clear, cold water pours from the tap, slipping down your throat in seconds. You assume this is the most natural biological act on Earth. But the real answer is far stranger. For a massive chunk of human history, drinking wild water was a lethal gamble. The fluid your body needs most was actively trying to kill your ancestors. How did human biology survive this paradox? They survive by deliberately fermenting weak alcohol. Think about a prehistoric river winding through a valley. It looks pristine, but just upstream, a decaying animal lies in the shallows, silently leaching microscopic bacteria into the rushing current. One sip, and your digestive tract is hijacked. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid. Before the advent of modern sanitation, dehydration was not the primary enemy of humanity. The water itself was the apex predator. As nomadic hunter-gatherers, your ancient relatives could mitigate this risk. They kept moving. They followed seasonal rains, seeking out untouched mountain springs and temporary pools of fresh snowmelt. The biological gamble was manageable. But roughly 10,000 years ago, everything changed. Your ancestors invented agriculture. They stopped roaming. They built permanent villages, which slowly swelled into crowded, chaotic cities. And with these dense crowds came a horrific new reality. Waste accumulated. Human waste piled up. Without plumbing, this toxic sludge seeped directly down into the local water table, poisoning the entire environment. The village well became a biological weapon. If you drank the water, you were almost certainly going to contract a lethal intestinal parasite. How do you hydrate a rising civilization when the rivers are toxic? The solution was not a medical breakthrough. The solution was alcohol. Around the time your ancestors were figuring out how to domesticate wild grain, they made a happy accident. Cereal grains left in clay pots were exposed to the rain, beginning to sprout in the damp warmth. Airborne yeast, invisible and ubiquitous, landed in this soggy mixture. The liquid bubbled. It transformed. When desperately thirsty humans took a risk and drank this murky, sour soup, two distinct things happened. First, they felt a strange, warming sensation spreading through their nervous systems. Second, and vastly more important, they did not die of dysentery. They had accidentally discovered the miracle of fermentation. When you brew primitive beer, you must first boil the water. This single application of intense heat instantly annihilated the deadly pathogens lurking in the river water. Then, the yeast takes over the environment. Yeast organisms aggressively consume the sugars in the grain, excreting ethanol and carbon dioxide as chemical byproducts. To the yeast, ethanol is simply waste. But to human biology, this weak alcohol creates an acidic, highly hostile environment where lethal bacteria simply cannot survive or replicate. The beer became a biological safe zone. Biomolecular archaeologist Patrick McGovern has spent decades analyzing the microscopic residue trapped inside ancient clay pots. He found that from the Neolithic villages of China to the deserts of the Middle East, the dawn of human civilization perfectly mirrors the dawn of brewing. But you must erase your modern concept of a crisp, refreshing pint. This was survival juice. It was thick. It was opaque. It resembled a chunky, floating porridge vastly more than a modern Pilsner, carrying immense calories to sustain exhausted laborers. It was a liquid meal. Did this mean ancient empires were populated entirely by intoxicated people? Not exactly. The alcohol content of this daily survival beer was remarkably low, often hovering around 1 or 2%. But it was consumed constantly. You would wake up and consume a clay bowl of beer. You would work in the scorching fields with a sealed jug of beer. You would go to sleep after a communal dinner centered around beer. Your ancestors existed in a perpetual, unending state of mild, protective inebriation. And this bizarre survival strategy was not isolated to the ancient deserts. Fast forward thousands of years to the Middle Ages in Europe. The rivers of London and Paris were open, flowing sewers. Drinking unboiled well water was equivalent to playing Russian roulette with your immune system. The universal solution was something called small beer. Small beer was a weak, fermented brew made from the second or third washing of the malted grain. It was incredibly cheap, widely available, and served as the primary hydration staple for absolutely everyone, even children. If you were a toddler growing up in medieval England, your parents are not handing you a cup of crisp spring water. They were handing you a wooden mug of warm, flat, low-alcohol beer. Your entire childhood hydration was based on a continuous drip of ethanol. Does your modern brain find this historical reality disturbing? It shouldn't, because your physical body has been aggressively preparing for this fermented diet for millions of years. Look deep into your own DNA. You possess a highly specific genetic mutation that separates you from the vast majority of other mammals on Earth. It involved a specialized enzyme called ADH4. This enzyme exists primarily in your stomach and your liver, and its single biological purpose is to rapidly metabolize ethanol. But here is the strangest part of the story. This mutation did not appear during the agricultural revolution. It appeared roughly 10 million years ago. Evolutionary biologist Robert Dudley calls this the drunken monkey hypothesis. Long before your ancestors walked upright, they were tree-dwelling apes. As ancient climates shifted and canopies shrank, these apes were forced to spend more time foraging on the dangerous forest floor. Down on the ground, they discovered ripe fruit that had fallen from the high branches. This bruised fruit was sitting in the hot sun. It was naturally fermenting. Those fallen fruits were packed with crucial, life-saving calories, but they were also laced with natural alcohol. Apes without the ADH4 mutation would eat the fruit, become heavily intoxicated, and stumble blindly into the jaws of waiting predators, or they would simply succumb to alcohol poisoning. But your specific ancestors? They carried a genetic cheat code. The ADH4 mutation allowed their livers to rapidly process the ethanol, harvest the dense calories, and remain sober enough to escape danger. The scent of alcohol drifting through the jungle wasn't a warning. It was a dinner bell. Your body is quite literally built to detect and process alcohol. It is a fundamental pillar of your evolutionary success story. Without that 10 million-year-old primate mutation, your ancestors could never have survived eating the fermented fruit of the forest floor. Without that adaptation, they could never have safely metabolized the weak beer of the first farming villages. Human civilization itself relied entirely on your liver's incredible ability to handle low-level toxins. So, what happened to this ancient rhythm? Why aren't you drinking a warm pint of chunky wheat mash right now? The turning point arrived astonishingly recently. The discovery of germ theory in the late 19th century changed everything. The invention of water chlorination followed. Engineers constructed massive, sprawling municipal water treatment plants, fundamentally altering the human habitat. Clean water flowed. Why did everything else change? For the very first time in human history, science allowed your ancestors to cleanly separate hydration from fermentation. Clean, reliable, pathogen-free water became a ubiquitous public utility rather than a daily gamble with death. Alcohol rapidly lost its sacred status as a vital survival tool. It shifted completely into the realm of recreation. The alcohol content skyrocketed. The nutritional value plummeted. The daily, low-level ration was rapidly replaced by the modern weekend binge, completely altering your relationship with ethanol. It became a drug. Why does your brain still crave the ritual? Because your primal biology has not forgotten the old ways. When you walk past a bustling bar on a Friday evening, you see groups of humans clinking glasses. You see them laughing, bonding, and sharing a fermented drink in a dimly lit room. You might think this is merely a modern cultural escape. You assume it is just a way to unwind from the artificial stresses of corporate life. But beneath the surface, it is a massive, ancient echo. You are watching a prehistoric survival mechanism disguised as a casual social ritual. Think about this the next time you pour a simple glass of water from your kitchen tap. You are experiencing a profound luxury that 99% of human history could never fathom. You are casually drinking the very element that used to be a relentless vector for mass death. Your ancestors conquered the entire planet because they learned to poison their water just enough to make it safe. They built the pyramids, survived the medieval plagues, and constructed the modern world, all while nursing a permanent, mild buzz. You are the descendant of the strongest survivors, the ones whose bodies adapted perfectly to the strange, sour chemistry of fermentation. Tonight, when you raise a glass, whether it is filled with crystal clear tap water or a dark, foaming stout, you are participating in a 10-million-year-old biological drama. Your brain craves absolute safety. Your liver stands permanent guard. Water gave you life, but alcohol gave you a future.